Donna Davis, the Epicurean Connection, located here in Sonoma Valley in California. Today, we're honored to have a very special guest with us, Pat Ford from Beehive Cheese in Utah. And thank you, Pat, for taking the time out of your busy day to be part of the Cheese Chat.
We're so glad to be here. It's also just great to see your smiling face.
And you too. And I loved reading your bio about you, your kids, and your grandkids. So today we're just really glad you were able to take time out of your cheese making and cheese sales to talk about your cheeses, your company, your family. And so maybe some of our listeners may not know. Can you share when and how Beehive Cheese started?
I can. So Beehive Cheese, we've been around 15 years now. My brother-in-law is my business partner, Tim Welsh, and he called me up literally about 16 years ago and said, let's quit our jobs and go make cheese. And we both got a good chuckle out of the thing, but here we are 16 years later. We didn't know a thing about cheese other than we liked it. And Tim has always been an amazing cook, a very, very much a foodie. And so we went up to Utah State, which is only about an hour north of here. And we worked with the dairy science program up there, and they thought we were totally nuts. Utah sometimes is about maybe not a decade, but at least half a decade behind the rest of the country. And so they didn't really know that the artisan movement in cheese was really happening. And we kind of educated them a little bit. And they realized that we had some success in previous lives, businesses, and that we had a passion, we had a business plan, we wanted to make cheese. And once they realized that, they had been working on a recipe, for like 60 years. They called it Old Juniper, and they asked us if we would commercialize that recipe. And we immediately changed the name to Promontory.
Oh, okay.
Which is the first cheese that we'll taste. And if you know anything about Utah history, the two railroads met at Promontory Point in 1869, which is real close to our dairy. And so we named our cheese Promontory, our base Irish cheddar that we make.
That makes sense.
But it's been a crazy fun road with our kids, our family, our friends. We've got 50 employees now, which is crazy.
That's amazing.
And 12 of them are family. And we just are having a good time, and the rest are adopted family, and we just had a lot of fun.
Oh, good for you. And so tell us about the Promontory flavors and the characters of this cheese.
So Promontory, as I mentioned, is the definition of an Irish cheddar is it has a lot of fat. Jersey cows that is the basis of it, Jersey cow milk. So we have about 5% milk fat in the winter time, which is huge compared to like a Holstein given 3.5%, say, milk fat. So the predominant feature in the Promontory is that it's very smooth and creamy, but it also has a little bit of a sweetness to it. I don't know if you're getting that. I better taste some too, huh?
Nice, sweet, very creamy, and delicious.
Very creamy, very delicious. But that is the palette from which we paint all of our pictures. That is the base of all of our cheeses.
Okay.
And then we transform our cheeses based on the different rubs that we do on the outside, the rub drying technique that we use. But Promontory, people, it's kind of funny. You've been at the fancy food show and people will come up to you, or you'll come up to our booth and you'll say, hey, what's new? What's new? And we'll laugh and we'll say, why don't you try this? It's Promontory. And they'll say, oh, I've never had that. I've never heard of that. And they'll taste it. And then we'll say, well, that's the base of all of our cheeses. And in fact, it's our most award-winning cheese.
Oh.
And people don't know it very much because it's a little less glitzy and glamorous and sexy than some of our other cheeses. But Promontory is an amazing cheese.
That's great.
So that's fun.
And how long do you age? How long do you age?
So Promontory typically is about 5 to 8 months. And, again, as you know, depending on the time of year, how much fat the cows are giving us, et cetera, sometimes it ages a little faster, a little slower, but typically about 5 to 8 months.
That's great. Well, it continues to be a very delicious cheese. So
Thank you.
thank you for sharing it with us. And
You're welcome.
I always love to tell the cheesemakers that your cheese samples this week become our mac and cheese next week. And so it's like, it's really fun to share with our local guests. So we do the cheese chat and then we make it into mac and cheese and we donate half that batch to the food bank.
Oh, that's fun. That's
And
so cool.
And it's a kind of nice little story. So I'm not just having cheesemakers send cheese so we can, eat all their cheese. I mean, I could, but that's part of our giving back to our community during these times.
Right. Well, we all know and love Gordon Edgar, local icon in the San Francisco Bay Area, but he was a judge in a competition way back when. I remember, I think it was Burlington ACS, but after the fact, he came up to us and he said, Pat, the reason your cheese is so good is because you have such a great foundation from which you build, and the promontory is our foundation. He said, in the old days, people would rub stuff on cheese because it was a mediocre cheese and they were trying to basically cover up, put a bunch of Cajun spice on something. It's not going to be very flavorful. But anyway, we're very proud of Promontory and we love the fact that it came from Utah State. We would not be where we are without them. They were amazing and they still are. And it's been a lot of fun that way.
Well, that sounds like still working with them is great. And I'm sure you're still sharing your knowledge and expertise with their students and faculty, because that's the type of people you are.
We do. We have a lot of people come in and intern and just kind of see what we're doing. And it's a lot of fun that way.
Oh, good for you. Well, how about our second cheese we have here? The
second cheese.
Pour Me a Slice.
Pour Me a Slice is a fun collaborative effort with Bean Suntory or Basil Hayden bourbon. And we got a call from actually John Antonelli from Antonelli's Cheese Shop in Austin about 2 years ago. And he said, I have a friend here from Basil Hayden's, and they want to do a collaborative effort. And so we grabbed a bottle of Basil Hayden bourbon. And we knew, it's so funny because you think of different pairings and you just know instantly that it's going to be a hit. Our promontory is so smooth and so creamy, and it has a sweet nature to it as it is. And with the corn in the bourbon, I knew it was going to be a hit. And then when we did it and tasted it, one of our rules of thumbs is if you don't do a back handspring the first time you taste something, it goes in the garbage and it's no longer even on the board. And Basil Hayden's was a big hit.
Oh, that's great.
It's turned out to be a super fun cheese.
Let's taste it.
Again, the sweetness of the bourbon, the sweetness of the cheese, and the complexities of the promontory. I love this cheese. I know I'm dropping a whole lots of names, but Mary Quick, also a big, we all know and love Mary. She's been a judge at the American Cheese Society forever. And she makes amazing, amazing cheeses. But she says, Pat, I love your cheeses because they're balanced. After all, people are buying cheese. They're not buying bourbon. They're not buying coffee. They're buying cheese. And if you put a splash of bourbon on and it enhances and makes the experience even better, then life is good. If you say, well, I can't taste the cheese, I only can taste whatever you put on it. She says, I love your, and this Basil Hayden to me is perfectly balanced, just a hint.
It really is. What a great pairing. Mm. That's a good sign. You give the
If you're humming and then you know it's good. But that cheese with an apple, a nice honey crisp apple in the fall. In fact, I was in the mountains yesterday and that was my lunch, an apple and this Pour Me a Slice. So anyway.
Great. I love the name.
Fun collaborative effort. They have been so fun to work with. And, part of their ploy is to get younger people to bring a bottle of bourbon to a party rather than a bottle of wine or beer. And the pairing is there. It's amazing. And so we're introducing a lot of people that are bourbon sippers to cheese and vice versa. So it's been a really fun collaborative effort.
Great partnership, thanks to John Antonelli.
Absolutely. Thank you, John.
John and Kendall were just on the cheese chat right before you today.
No way.
Yes way.
Oh, that's fun. I love those guys. They're amazing.
So great. And when I told them I displayed your cheese when we interviewed them, and John immediately spotted the cheeses. So now it all makes sense.
Yep. So Basil Hayden, it's called Pour Me a Slice, and you can get it at Kroger, Trader Joe's. A lot of small local markets carry it as well, but it's going to end up being one of our most popular cheeses. It's a really great cheese.
Well, congratulations on that one. That's exciting.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Oh, and one of my favorites is your Barely Buzzed.
Barely Buzzed. What a crazy cheese. When we first made that, I tell you, we turned some heads and they thought we were totally nuts, right?
I
You
remember.
remember. So they thought, who are these goof yahoos from Utah doing this crazy coffee thing? So after we'd made Promontory, so Tim and I made every ounce of cheese for the first 4 years with the help of our kids that were about that tall, and now they're really tall, and they're my boss actually now, my boy, and Britton, Tim's boy. But we were making our Promontory, and we thought, you know what, this is a really nice white cheddar, but there is nothing all that extra special about it. And we thought about Ig Vela, who comes from your neck of the woods, and way back in the 40s, rubbed some cocoa and pepper on some cheese, and Vela Dry Jack. I mean, it's an amazing cheese, right? And we thought, what could we rub on cheese that would be really fun? We thought of, you put cream in coffee. Why not coffee on cream? So we rubbed some coffee on the cheese. Tim, again, as the amazing cook that he is,
Right.
he thought, sometimes coffee can be a little bitter. And so let's round it out a little bit with something floral and nice. And he had some lavender. I mean, so we put them together, tried them. Next thing we knew, we had a family party about just before American Cheese Society happened, and we ate it and liked it. And so up in Portland, American Cheese Society that year, back in 2006, we took a little bit, and next thing we know, it's in distribution. And a year later in Burlington, Vermont, we win first place. And I thought it might end up just being a flash in the pan, but I tell you, Barely Buzzed, people know and love.
Yeah, I consider it one of the Artisan American originals. I mean, it holds its own weight. It has its uniqueness, and I think it shares your creativity too, using your foundation, promontory cheese, but also adding the lavender and the coffee. And I remember when you made this, we used a cheese pairing, so I brewed coffee with lavender, and that's what we paired with it. It was a coffee and cheese pairing.
Isn't it amazing? And it's because of the creaminess and the softer nature of our cheese. They just absorb those beautiful coffee notes way into the cheese.
Absolutely.
I took a sales trip down the west coast of California when we were first young and new, and I took some Barely Buzzed, and I stopped at like 15 different vineyards and wineries, and all of them, like 13 of the 15 said, "Oh, well, we already have that cheese. It goes really well with a Pinot and whatever." I'm like, okay, well, that's pretty cool. So
it does.
Anyway, it's really good with a nice Pinot.
I put a nice Old Vine Zin out here that we love with your Barely Buzzed. Because you can still taste the cheese, you taste the wine, and it finishes with a little bit of essence of, the lavender and coffee. And so.
Isn't that nice? And another kind of fun story about that cheese. So I was at the fancy food show waiting for a cab, and I was talking to a nice gentleman. He had a big Swiss cross on his name badge, and asked him who he was. And we were just chatting, and he says, "What do you do?" And I said, "Well, we make this crazy cheese that has coffee on it." And he says, "I know this cheese." He said, "I was in New York last year at the fancy food show." And he says, "I was having dinner, and out comes this cheese plate, and it has this cheese with coffee on it, of all things." And he said, "I went into this tirade with my partner who was there, saying, 'These stinking Americans, what are they doing to our cheese? What do they think they're doing?'" And his buddy says, just calm down, relax. It wouldn't be on the board if it was terrible." So he tried it, and he's like pensive. And then he says, "These brilliant Americans, we're getting away with things that they would be lynched for in Sweden, Switzerland, because they've done it a certain way for so long that that's the only way. And we don't know what we can't do. And it turned out to be an amazing cheese. So
it is. I love it. And I look forward to having it back in our cheese case now, since we just reopened a cheese shop. So.
Oh, cool. That's awesome. Thank you.
During the pandemic, we reopened a cheese shop.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
That's good.
We took our education center and turned it back into a retail shop.
Oh, good.
We can't host events and classes. We switched it into the cheese retail. So we're back to cheese charcuteries and goodies and pantry items. And our second cheese case arrives tomorrow.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah.
Well, people are buying, and again, talking about the crazy pandemic, people are cooking and enjoying each other's company at home. If they can't do it at a restaurant, they're going to do it at home, and they are, and it's awesome to see. That's
great. And I think the retailers really appreciate. I admire the cut size. I think it's perfect for a family to try a new cheese. It's approachable. It's guests will try a new cheese when the size isn't intimidating.
Exactly. I agree.
And so you're not your last or ever least, but your cheese, the Red Butte Hatch Chili.
So Red Butte, again, turning out to be an amazing cheese. We collaborated. We do that a lot. A little local grocery store chain called Harmon's, which you know well. They have 19 stores in Utah. But we wanted to do a collaborative effort with them. We had their cheesemongers in. They made cheese with us, and we came up with some hatch chilies in the paste of the cheese. We took the hatch chilies that were dried, we ground them, we rubbed them on the outside of the cheese. So you end up with kind of a 1-2 punch. One is the sweetness of the nice fresh hatch chilies in the paste, and the little bit of smoky kind of complexity on the rind. And it's turning out to be an amazing cheese.
It's delicious. It has flavor, a little savory, but not too spicy.
Not hot.
That would make a delicious grilled cheese sandwich.
Oh boy. Mm-hmm. Yes. Anything melted, ooey gooey. It's really great.
And it looks beautiful too. It stands out on the shelf, the colors and the fact
Another fun thing about this cheese too, the reason we named it Red Butte is at the University of Utah, there's a beautiful outdoor garden. It's called Red Butte Gardens. They have outdoor concert series. It's just an amazing garden, but we donate 3% of the proceeds of this cheese to Red Butte Gardens, and Harmon's continues to do that as well. So 6% of every dollar that is sold in this cheese gets donated to Red Butte Gardens. So it's pretty fun that way.
Thank you for doing that. And that leads me into my next question. I always like to ask the cheesemakers or cheesemongers, how do you, as a company or personally or family, participate in your community philanthropically? And I always like to say, not, dollar-wise, not saying how much do you donate, but do you volunteer at a cause, or do you make cheese for a food bank? But you already just shared one fantastic project.
We love giving cheese to anybody, and everybody that asks us for cheese, we give them gift certificates, and it's easier than sending cheese for a basket for a raffle or whatever, but we do. I tell you, with this pandemic, I mentioned that we have a lot of family members and those that are not family or adopted family. And our biggest fear was that, when we were not receiving POs, that if we're not going to get POs, we can't pay for the milk next month when the bill comes. And so we had to cut back significantly. And it was hard after you've cleaned the creamery 3 times a week and we're not making cheese. So our employees didn't have anything to do. We actually did a fundraiser, a GoFundMe raiser, and we ended up raising some money, and we made that cheese and donated it to the food bank. And that was really super fun. It was amazing, the response that we got on the GoFundMe. Mm-hmm. It almost makes me tear up because it was amazing. I mean, we raised $31,000 like in a week, and
that's amazing.
Put our people to work, and we made cheese. But another thing that was insane, I was in a conversation with a local dairy. it wasn't actually the dairy that we use, but he's a friend of ours. And he said, I'm dumping milk in the ditch because I have nowhere to send it. And the local co-op called Dairy West, they and the dairies and ourselves, we collaborated. And rather than dumping milk, they reduced the price to $7 a hundredweight, which is unheard of. I mean, it's usually like $26 a hundredweight, but rather than dump it, they were able to have Dairy West purchase that for $7 a hundredweight. We put only our labor into the cost of the cheese, so labor only. And then Dairy West was able to fund the purchase of the milk and paid for our labor. And we ended up donating just over 130,000 pounds of cheese to the local food banks. And it was so amazing because you should have seen the food banks. They smile pretty big when you show up with a truck of cheese.
Right.
But amazing. What an amazing thing. It was awesome.
And those are exactly what I love our viewers to hear and our listeners, is because all of you cheesemakers are also humble in your actions, and I appreciate that you just do what the community needs. And that's, you step up. Kurt damn near did something very similar from Beechers.
Right.
It just, the Point Reyes ladies, the Giacomini sisters, they did a similar for their food bank. So I just want to thank you all for doing those type of projects.
Well, it benefits, like I said, it benefited the dairy, it benefited us, it benefited the food banks. I mean, it was a win-win for everybody. It was really good.
Your community, there's a whole community benefited.
Isn't that amazing? When we go to the Fancy Food Show or the American Cheese Society, our very favorite people to see, you know, we love our distributors, but our fellow cheesemakers, it's just like a big family. It's so fun.
It is. Well,
each other.
I am so appreciative that you could take the time to join us, share the history of your company, you and Tim and your family, and share your beautiful cheeses with us. And I thank you. My daughter and my husband and I enjoyed tasting them, so thank you. And also thank you for rescheduling us during wildfires and power outages of living in the California life. But we seem to be back on track with rain coming next week, theoretically.
That's good. Yes,
we're ready. We're ready. I think the entire county might go stand out in the rain when it rains. So
have a party. Good.
Absolutely, a safe party. So, but thank you, Pat, so much for your time and sharing your knowledge and expertise and your philanthropic values in your community. And please give everybody at your creamery our best. And we will be in touch with you again soon.
Thanks, Shauna. We appreciate you very much.
And we miss seeing you, but we will get together again.
We will for sure. Have a great day.
You too. Stay safe and healthy. Thank you, Tim. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye. Thank you.